Hello YouTube, W&J's Handy Dad here. Today we are doing the spark plugs on the Dodge Charger. Mine is the police model with the Hemi 5.7 liter. And believe it or not, it takes 16 spark plugs. Now I opted to play it safe and just get the factory replacements, which are the LZ FR5C11 plugs. And I found a 16 pack that was fairly cheap. Now the other tools that you're going to want to have, first of all, you're going to want a 5/8 spark plug socket. You're probably going to want a 5/8 socket as well. You're going to need some extensions in various lengths. You're going to need a torque wrench that can handle torque at about 15 foot-pounds. You're going to want some tune-up grease and some anti-seize lubricant. And of course, some people will say you don't need the anti-seize. I always use it. It's never hurt. Obviously, you may or may not need it. The other thing is, of course, a gapping tool. And one thing I noticed with these plugs is they did not come pre-gapped, so I had to actually gap each one. So the process is going to be pretty straightforward. You have these coil packs here that are bolted on with two 10mm bolts, and they have one electrical connection. And underneath each coil pack are two spark plugs. So you have 8 coil packs and 16 spark plugs. And you see most of them are fairly easy to access on the driver's side, and we will look at the passenger side shortly. I'm going to have to remove this hose here for access most likely. And these clips are not super easy to get off. You do probably need a screwdriver to get them off. I would also recommend only doing one at a time, and of course you also need to make sure you clean everything before you start. Either blow compressed air or vacuum this off so that none of the dust or dirt gets down into the engine. And here is the passenger side. Fortunately, these all look like they should be fairly easy to get to. I guess I will find out once I start. You know, when I did the Crown Vic, there were 2 or 3 that were not impossible, but certainly a little bit more challenging to reach because of the things that were in the way. This looks like they're all pretty accessible. Maybe a little bit of a tight fit back in there. That may be where I need some sort of swivel, possibly there as well. I'm going to show you one of these on film. The rest of them are all going to be identical. So remove that, unbolt the 2 bolts, and then pop it off of there. And of course they have them in really difficult to get off of there. I don't really understand why they made these tabs so difficult to remove. But you definitely need some sort of pry tool, and then just basically push on there and it should come off. I couldn't get it off just with my fingers despite trying. And then take your 10mm socket and just unbolt these. Some of these were on really tight, and some of them I was able to get off without a whole lot of effort. One nice thing is it seems like the bolts do stay attached to the coil packs, so you know, I didn't lose any. You know, some prior projects, stuff like that will fall down, and you spend time trying to dig it out of the engine bay. And just pull it straight out. And once it's out, you see there are the 2 boots and 2 spark plug holes. Now the plugs are pretty deep and they have a lot of threads. If you've ever done a Crown Vic, you know, those plugs don't thread in very deep and notorious for spitting out and stuff. These I don't think you would ever lose a plug. You'll see what I'm talking about. If you have a air wrench to remove them, it will make your life a lot easier. See, this one's probably been over torqued because it shouldn't be that difficult to turn. Get a breaker bar. We'll try this with the long bar here and see if we can get any movement. Yeah. In case you're wondering, I did vacuum this out off camera. See what I'm saying? These things are in deep. Okay. So that one does look like they at least put anti-seize on it. Looks like it's got a lot of dirt in the threads though. It's the same part number, the LZ FR5C11, and I actually checked that before I ordered mine because, you know, sometimes with the police cars, maybe they have a different part number, and a lot of times when you're searching online, you may find like the RT part number or whatever, and it may or may not be the same. So in this case, I'm not sure. I think this is the same as the RT, but like I said LZ FR5C11. But you see the threads compared to like the Crown Vic, I think it's about from my thumb up as far as threads go. There's our new plug, nice and clean, and I was surprised it's not gapped. It's at about 36 or 37, it used to be at 43. So we'll just bend it ever so slightly. Okay, now we're at 43, and knowing that these are not pre-gapped, I'm not going to pull any more until I go gap all these so that they'll just be ready to thread in. So generally don't want to keep this open very long, so like normally I would just pop one out, put the next one in. Filming a video for you, you know, sometimes you get stuck in the middle or whatever. So I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on the thread there and thread this back in by hand. Because it's so deep, I'm going to have to use a hose to get in there. So I just use a little bit of anti-seize. I like to kind of spread it around on the threads. I suppose if you don't do that, it'll spread itself as you're threading it in.
You want to make sure.
Other thing, make sure you don't get any on the tip of the plug, just on the So my trick for getting these started is get a 5/16 fuel line, or approximately that size. Push the spark plug into the hose, and as you see, that'll hold it well enough that you can get it started, almost like hand threading. Obviously, if you have spark plugs that you can reach with your hand, you won't need the hose, but these are so deep that you either have to do it with the socket or the hose. And the nice thing about the hose is, like I said, it holds it, but it kind of starts it like hand threading, so you're not likely to cross thread or anything. And then once you get it started and threaded in there, you know, usually you can tell that it's not cross threaded. Once it's threaded a little bit, then you can just pop the hose off and then finish with the socket wrench and of course your torque wrench. So you see it just pops right out. The plug's in there, partially threaded. And the reason you don't want to use the spark plug socket for installation is when you get it in there, a lot of times when you go to remove it, it does that. It separates from your extension, and then that's left in there. And in this car in particular, it's deep enough that it would be difficult to remove it. So what I normally do is get an actual just regular socket wrench, not the spark plug type, and use that with the torque wrench to get these tightened to the proper amount. And then obviously with just a regular wrench, it just comes right out when you're done because it's not grabbing the plug. And as you saw when I was removing it, it's going to take a lot of turns. So many that you may actually want to start without the wrench on there. Kind of like that, and just turn it till you can't turn it by hand easily. And there's 15. So you just repeat the process with each successive spark plug. Like I said, I would do one at a time, and that way you don't get anything mixed up, and the process should go really smoothly that way. Like I said, spark plug socket, great for removing, not so good for putting them back in with. Gapped on the rubber hose here, and a little bit of anti-seize. So when you reinstall these coils, I think it's always a good idea to put some of the dielectric tune-up grease inside the boots. Doesn't take a whole lot, but just enough to seal. You can also put it on that end if there's leaks, and I also recommend putting some where the electrical connector goes. It just helps waterproof everything, and if you wash your engine like I do, obviously that helps to keep it safe. Then just start the bolts back by hand, and as best I can tell, the torque setting on them was 9 foot-pounds, which isn't a whole lot. If you don't have a torque wrench that goes that low, basically what I did was hand tighten them plus about a quarter turn. I've been torquing bolts long enough that I have a pretty good sense of where where they're at when I'm tightening them. But obviously if you have a torque wrench, that's the safest way to go. So you see I'm having to hold the socket to keep it from just basically going back and forth, and now that it's snug enough that I don't have to do it, then I'm just snugging it up until it feels tight and then giving it about a quarter of a turn. Like I said, I would tend to err on the side of not tightening them too much because you don't want to strip that out. And now it's snug, and I'll just reconnect the electrical and then move on to the next one. The process goes the same way on all of them. So 1 down, 7 to go. I'm not going to sit here and film all of them. Basically what I'll do is I'm going to just do the rest of them, and then if there's anything unique about any of the particular ones, I will put that in the video. But like I said, basically all 8 of them work exactly the same as the one you just saw. Alright, I finished this side, and only issue I had at all was instead of using the long extension like I did in the first ones, I had to switch to using 2 short extensions to get around these air conditioner lines. But I was able to do it without any kind of wobble or bend or any kind of special sockets. So you can do it. And then I did remove this hose just for access, and it just fits right back over there. So it just pulls off and pushes back on. So driver's side is done. I'm going to go do the passenger side, and I'm going to hope that it goes as quickly and easily as the driver's side did, because doing 8 is a lot for one side. Alright, I am done. I have to say, having done lots of spark plugs in my lifetime, despite having 16 plugs, this was actually one of the easier spark plug swaps that I've done. As you would predict, this one here and the one in the back there had the most clearance issues on the passenger side, kind of like the driver's side had the clearance with the air conditioner, and obviously these two in the middle were just about straight shots. So this one needed kind of in between size extension, so what I did is I put a swivel, basically one of those, as an extension. I didn't need it as a swivel, I just needed about that much more length to reach. And then I think it was maybe this one that didn't need an extension or something. Anyway, if you do this, it's pretty straightforward. You just basically, if you've got the short and the long extension pieces and one small one like a swivel, you'll be able to do this job no problem. And this piece, I didn't do this zip tie, that was already on there. You can lift that up and move it out of the way, and that moves this hose down here out of the way. Makes it a little bit easier. But like I said, overall, this was a pretty easy job. Definitely one of the fastest spark plug changes I've done on a V8. And like I said, this had 16 plugs. Alright, these are the plugs that came out. I'll let you internet experts decide if these things were shot. I would say it was definitely time to replace them. Wasn't really having any issues with the car. It would start right up and had a lot of power. It's also unclear. I'm gonna look it up again, but you know, a lot of the newer cars do 100,000 mile plugs, but if I read it right, these are 30,000 mile plugs. Since I've only had the vehicle since about 92 or 93,000 miles on it, I don't know if they ever changed them before, but that's one reason why I wanted to change them. But I also assumed that they were 100,000 mile plugs, and I'm thinking these are not. But anyway, I'll look that up and I'll add it to the video. Hope the video was helpful. If it was, appreciate a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and please tell your friends about my channel. Thank you very much.